Let me tell you about having a celly that snored. I had a celly that snored so loud. Could you imagine living in a 2 by 4 cell, the size of your bathroom, with a man that snores? I'm going to tell you all about that. Just sit back, enjoy the ride, and let me do what I got to do, because this is how we get down at the Mecca. Just let me ride. If you don't like the ride, you could always tap out. Now, I had a celly, That's the worst part about doing time, is having a, share cells with somebody, with another man, another grown man, and you in a cell. Really, it's, 4 foot by 8 foot, the size of your bathroom. And they might have locked down for a month, 2 months, 3 months. They might even put you to be locked in the cell for 5 years with this man. Now, picture that. Now, I got to sell you. I'm not going to make this long. I'm just going to get to the point. But before I even begin, I want to give a shout out to my man, Big Face Gary. Make sure you go subscribe at the Big Face Gary Show. All right? That's the Big Face Gary Show. Make sure you go subscribe at the Big Face Gary Show. That's my man. Good people always call, give good advice, got great content. You know what I mean? I did an interview over there. You go check it out. But anyway, I had a celly, you know what I mean? And me and my celly used to, we used to go to sleep early, and, cause I got to get up, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning and make prayer. So, we went to sleep early, and we had a celly next door that used to snore so loud, it sounded like a freight train. I mean, this dude went off. I mean, you can't even picture or imagine what it sounds like. I'm not even in the cell with him, I'm next door to him, and I got to bang on the wall. Boom, 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 boom. Yo, come on, dog, hold it down over there. And, dude just kept snoring, So the next morning, I talked to his celly, and I said, yo, what's up with your celly, son? I mean, how you sleep with him in the cell like that? He said, man, I got to get used to it, man. I'm getting ready to go to commissary and go get me some of those little earplugs, I'm like, earplugs? I said, dog, I got earplugs and I still hear this dude. And he's like, yo, I mean, I said, do what you do. Tonight, if he starts sleeping, tap on the bottom of the bunk and tell him to roll over. You know what I mean? See if that works. So later on that night, we go to sleep. And as I'm sleeping again, I'm waking up with... I mean, this joint is so loud, And let me tell you about his celly, dude that's snoring. Dude that's snoring is like $1.20 soaking wet. $1.20. This man is snoring like he's every bit of 400 pounds. I don't know how these loud sounds are coming out this little man, But he was a good dude. We had fun. We played spades with him during the day, and you know what I mean? And he knew a little about the law, so he was good to talk to. But he snored so loud. So I said, dog, what's the issue? And he said, man, I don't know. I said, okay, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to sick call in the morning, and we're going to find out what they could give you for this snoring. So we go back, we played a little basketball, we hung out, we chilled out, and we laughed about it. And he played really good. Little dude was a good, guard, I mean, he was like that, So the next morning, after him keeping me up all night again, we shoot over there to the medical. We go to the medical, and, he's telling them that he's snoring, and they like, well, try putting cotton balls in your nose. So he goes back, he put the cotton balls in his nose, and now he's snoring, but instead of the normal sounds that he normally makes, because now he's breathing out his mouth, you know what I mean? And it's like it's vibrating the walls, I mean? Nobody on the tier could sleep That's how loud this is. Nobody on the tier could sleep. He was sleeping so loud. So I banged on the wall again, and I'm yelling through the doors in the vent, telling him, he says, Celly, yo, turn him over, turn him over. You know what I mean? And he just kept doing it. Now, the next morning we go back to medical. So when we go back to medical again, I tell him again, I said, look, you know what I mean? Let them know you tried the cotton balls, it ain't working. So now, of course, they tell them the same thing I tell them. They say, okay, well, you're snoring, and maybe the side you're sleeping on, so roll over on the other side, da-da-da. You know what I mean? He go back, he roll over on the other side, try that, now he making a whole nother noise. But either way, it's loud as heck. Man, $120. I mean, really, yeah, I said he was $120 soaking wet. He was really like 90 pounds soaking wet, but $120 normally. And I can't phantom how to, for the life of me, these loud sounds are coming out this man. So we go back the next morning again, and we tell him, look, we tried the cotton balls, and we tried to roll them over. None of that worked. So what can we do? You can't give him some medication. Somebody said, nah, well, you got to take him and go to see the psych. Maybe he's stressing. Maybe that's what it is. So we walked over to the psych together. So we go over to the psych together, and we tell the psych is saying they can't believe that I'm next door to him in a whole nother cell, and I could hear him because he's only 90 pounds soaking wet and 120 pounds normally. I'm telling them, like, yo, it's that loud. Nobody on the tier could sleep. So now they offering to give him medication. And, of course, he jumps on it. And I'm trying to I'm giving the same, message that Dr. Shakur gave me. I said, family, don't get into these people medication, because all they're going to do is they're going to experiment on you. Before you know it, you start growing another arm out your neck. You know what I mean? So, don't mess with these people medication, man. And he's like, nah, but if it's going to help y'all sleep, I said, dog, I'll move, you know what I mean, before I sanction you getting medication. He said, nah, I respect that, homie, but, man, I don't know what it is. I wasn't snoring on the street. I said, maybe no one told you on the street, So he's like, yeah, all right, but I'm going to do what I can, man. But, I said, let me try their medication. He said, let me try their medication, So, of course, I tell him no. I said, nah, don't do that, So they give him some exercise to do with his nostrils and all this before he go to sleep, to do all this, to open up the airwaves and, some stupid crap. They got him in the mirror doing this all night. So you see the dude sitting in front of the TV doing this from about 8 o'clock. He's trying to open up the airwaves, So he goes in there that night, and now from him doing that, open up the airwaves, he's snoring like a trumpet. I'm like, oh my God. So now I said, look, let me holler at your Celly. So I take his Celly out in the day room. We sit down at the table, and I said to him, I said, family, how do you sleep in there with it? I'm next door and I'm hearing this. He said, yo, I ain't going to lie. I found the technique, that helps me sleep, with him in the cell. And it works, you know what I mean, for the both of us. He don't know nothing about it, but it works for the both of us. What do y'all think that technique was? Put it in the comments. What do you think his technique is that he used so that he could sleep through the noise? But anyway, so I'm going to get back to that because I'm riding. But I don't have all types of Cellys. I had a Celly that was anal. You know what I mean? I call him anal. Because we got 2 lockers, you know what I mean, and a desk in the middle. And, you go in and you put your stuff on the desk, you take out, you take your knife, put it on the desk, you take your ID card and, whatever papers you got when you was on the phone or your pen, and you put it on the desk. And everything I put on the desk, this dude liked to move over to one side of the desk and told me, that's your side, this is my side. I said, family, this our cell. Both sides is ours. You can put your stuff on what you call my side, because I'm going to put my stuff on what you call your side. And he's like, nah, but, I like to keep it clean. I said, dog, you in prison. You know what I mean? He's like, but every time you come in, you just throw your stuff down. I said, family, I'm not going to have this conversation with you about where I can and cannot put my stuff in my cell. Just like I would never let you do that. And he's like, yeah, but I said, yeah, all right. So, I put my stuff up there. And then now, a couple of days later, show you how Cellys are. A couple of days later, I'm making a soup. a butt naked soup. A butt naked soup is a ramen soup. I'm making a butt naked soup so, you squeeze the pack up so that you could turn the noodles like into rice, you know what I mean? So that you could put it in with rice and stretch the rice, with this butt naked soup. So I'm squeezing the joint, cock, cock, cock. And as I'm squeezing the pack boss, poof, and some of the ramen noodles falls on the floor, you know? So I didn't even realize it because I was rushing to try and get back to the rice to put it in there for the rice start boiling. I'm doing what I got to do. So I go out there and I do that, and I come back in the room. And when I come back in the room, this man is sweeping the room. You know what I mean? I said, okay. So I stepped back out. I went back over there, to my cooking area, and I'm cooking, down the hall where they got the little microwaves at and all that. So I go down here and I'm cooking by the microwave. While I'm cooking by the microwave, somebody said, oh, your Celly wants the dustpan, I said, okay, I'll help him. I get the dustpan, I take it down there, I give it to him. So when I hand him the dustpan, I see him sweeping up the stuff. So now I go in there and I go to go get the stuff, some more seasoning out my locker to put with this rice and mackerel that I'm making and, butt naked soup. So when I go in the locker and as soon as I look down on the floor is these crumbs. I mean, big crumbs, big chunks of ramen noodles that came out from me squeezing the bag, trying to turn it into a small rice type shape. So I said, dog, you missed this. You know what I mean? And that man looked at me and told me straight up with a straight face, I didn't drop that. You dropped it. I said, dog, you're sweeping the cell. He like, yeah, but dog, you made the mess. I said, huh? He said, yeah, you made the mess, I said, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Either you're going to get up out this cell, or we're going to fight in this cell. But one of us got to go. It's not going to make it right now. Because there's no way in hell you sweep the cell and you leave some noodles on the floor because you're saying, I spilled it when this cell is only 4 foot by 8 foot and we both have to live in here. So you think if we get germs in here or a mouse in here that he's only going to eat my food and not eat yours? Or do you think that only I would get sick, you won't get sick, or vice versa? Don't you know whatever comes in this room, that's both of our issues. So both of our issues, meaning we both got to deal with it. You're like, man, but I ain't clean up behind you. And that's where I hooked off on him. You know what I mean? Gunshots to my ignorance, Because I couldn't talk it out with the dude because to me it was a stupid conversation. So we just got to fighting in the cell. We fighting in the cell, So, ain't nobody get locked up. So when we was done, I go back out, I finish cooking. And when I come back, he packed his stuff and he's moving in with his homie, I guess he said I was too messy, you know what I mean? But he moved in with his homie, so now I got a single cell, all right? Let's ride back to homie. I gave y'all enough time to put in the comments what do you think he did for his method of sleeping. This dude snored so loud, I couldn't sleep next door. The people 2 cells down and 3 cells down from me couldn't sleep because they could hear this little 90-pound soaking wet man snoring like a bee. So I asked this man at the table, how do you sleep through that? Why don't you get a new Celly, put the dude out, or you leave and find another cell? But why would you stay in the room with all that snoring? That man looked at me and said, man, that's the best Celly I ever had. I said, the best Celly I said, you can't get no sleep. He said, nah, I'm getting sleep, you. I said, well, I'm not getting no sleep. He said, yeah, but I don't have a problem with him. I said, what do you mean you don't have a problem with him? He said, man, I ain't got a problem with him. He said, I sleep good every night. I said, how the hell you sleep through that? He said, when dude come in, he goes to sleep. When he goes to sleep, you know what I mean? And he starts snoring and he get the and all that. He said, I know he fast asleep. He said, I pull out my girly magazines and I masturbate. He said, I masturbate maybe 3-4 times a night until I'm good and drained and I'm tired. You know what I mean? And then I fall asleep because I'm tired. So I love Mrs. Celly. I said, oh, come on, dog. You in the cell masturbating with your celly? He said, dog, he sleep, man. You know, if I got to put up with his snoring, he got to put up with me sneak masturbating. I said, get the heck out of here. Gunshots. You know what I mean? Gunshots. I said, so you in there masturbating with that man in the cell? He said, you sleep, you? I said, come on, dog, but why would you do that? You know what I mean? He said, man, how else am I going to sleep? He said, you ain't getting no sleep. I said, so what you telling me to do, masturbate till I go to sleep, nigga? You know what I mean? And he started laughing. He said, no, I ain't telling you that. I'm just telling you what I got to do because it's just too loud in here. So after I do what I got to do, I'll be so drained and tired, I just crash, and next thing I know, I'm waking up and the doors is open. You know? And I said, man, you're a better man than me because I couldn't do it. But, you know, I just wanted to tell you that one about, you know, the celly that snored too much. You know, this is short to the point. You know, but man, this is crazy, man. You know, I mean, this dude, you know, let me tap out. Like I said, Cash App on the screen is not the one with my logo, and it don't have 2 L's in a 1. They done shut down the one that he had just like mine. He started another one. Just know mine says created 2020, and the last name is HALL. You know what I mean? Don't just go by that, but he got all these other numbers after the L, so you know it's him. Just to keep my peoples abreast, cop the book of Raw in Harlem, subscribe at my Roku channel, subscribe and download videos at my iTunes joint, you know, podcast. You know, just support the hustle, man. That's all I'm saying. All right?
Cheers. Cheers. To the crime.
Fresh out the can of 26, heat back on the strip, getting back in the mix. What he mentions a gift. You stand up 10 toes down, and I suggest you pay attention to this. Take a little gully posse and put it in Harlem. He cut from the bottom, came up from the bottom. Drop the book, you should go and get it. The Instagram page and the YouTube, you could go and visit. Then you could consider yourself LinkedIn. Sit front row and get Jews from a kingpin. How he went through it, so you ain't gotta go do it. Did not pay attention, would be stupid. Talking about a man that probably put your grandfather on. Probably the reason that him and your grams got along. A man that generated millions on the block, did his time, never squilling to the cops, make an audio. Get it live like 2 G's in the 90s. Drop top beamer so shiny. I let shorty go, she was whining. Treat her like my past, she behind me. Spend a couple bands on the dapper Dan. You be back again, getting green like a Packers fan. No cap, it's a roaring uptown. They be horn uptown, Dominican bust down. Now we on the positive, you we got a lot to give. Now he trying to stop the kids from being inoperative. So take heed, homie, lend an ear. He started in uptown, he gon' finish dead. But now it ain't about selling drugs, buying cars. It's about buying property to make the community ours. So we can give back to the youth them, cause they the truth them. And bless up to all the root men.